You've brought on some team, you've closed some business, the vision is starting to come true, but now instead of having the room and the time to work on the next level of the business, you are stuck in day-to-day chaos. When founders and entrepreneurs hit these ceilings, the normal natural instinct is to just put our heads down and push through, but brute force doesn't scale. We have to approach it differently. And this is where most people have to learn the lesson that you have to evolve as a leader faster than the business grows, or else you're just going to hit these ceilings time and time again. I'm John Hill, aka Small Mountain, and in this episode of the Founders Growth Show, I'm sitting down with Brent Garrett. From starting out as a single plumbing truck operator to managing a $2.4 billion real estate portfolio, Brent is sharing the very unsexy truths about evolving from a doer to a leader. We dive into why the instinct of just working harder is the most dangerous trap when you are caught in the messy middle, the exact moment where you must shift in your mindset from how do I do this to who needs to be doing this, and a brilliant communication strategy that will instantly kill all the workplace politics that slow you down. If you're tired of playing whack-a-mole in your daily operations and are ready to build a business that thrives without your consistent input, this episode is your blueprint. Let's get into it. All right, Brent, welcome to the show. I'm very excited to dive in with you and talk about your book and your path and what you're working on now. But before we do that, before I get too excited, can you give a broad overview about the work that you do so that way everyone is kind of caught up and we don't leave anybody too far off in the deep end?
Sure, John, and it's great to be with you and your listeners. So I started at, I'll say, the age of 12, and don't worry, I'm not going to take you through my whole life. But at 12, I started on the end of a shovel. My dad was a plumber. He had returned from the Korean War, drill sergeant, and started trade, and was always an owner of a business with about 2 or 3 trucks. And I was a first generation graduate. I got my degree in marketing and accounting. Broke my dad's heart when I told him I wanted to start my own plumbing and air conditioning business. I had always wanted to be a small business owner or an entrepreneur. I just felt like that was the way it was going to go well for me. I felt like I wouldn't be limited by somebody else. And so I won't take you through the whole story with my dad, but he was not happy with me. He said, "I'll be back in 2 weeks. I want to talk to you again." It was my last semester in college. And he came back and he said, "Look," he said, "I don't have any money to help you. We're darn sure not going to work together." And we both agreed on that one. Let's save Thanksgiving dinner and Christmas. But he said, "If you're going to do this, I want you to go to work for one of these 3 companies for the next 2 years. And if you can't make it, you've got to promise me that you will not start your own business." And I said, "Okay, what are the 3 companies?" He said, "New York Life, Northwestern Mutual, or Mutual of New York." And I went to work for New York Life. And I'm going to tell you, it's the best piece of advice I ever got from my dad. I asked him why later. He said, "Look," he said, "if I had learned how to sell early on, even if I wasn't very good at it, I would have made it really big in the skilled trades lane." And it was the best piece of advice my dad ever gave me. I went to Little Rock, Arkansas. I played football at Arkansas Tech. I was got to get a shout out for my school. I was a
Absolutely.
quarterback there, and so I made it to Little Rock. Went to work for New York Life. Had a great sales trainer, Dick Cobb. I can't thank him enough. And I learned how to sell there. And I laid sometimes in bed staring at the ceiling at 5 in the morning going, who am I going to call on? Because it's a straight commission job, John.
hmm
And it was a great advice for 2 reasons. One, to learn how to sell, but to understand early on what it's like to sweat what the future looks like. And that's the life of an entrepreneur. So, I fast forward, I started my own company from the truck. I will say I really enjoyed selling life insurance. I really did. John, we got 2 problems. We're either going to live too long or die too short, and we can take care of both problems for you no matter what happens. It's just in
You
my head.
still got it locked and
Yeah,
loaded. That's
absolutely.
awesome.
But I went on and started my own business in Richardson, Texas, Canyon Creek Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning. I had $5,000 and a 50-page business plan. Grew that, sold it 5 years later to a company called ServiceMaster. joined their consumer services. The company that bought me was ARS Rescue Rooter. I joined their executive team. I did mergers and acquisitions with them, did some operations work with them. Yeah, I've got a lot to offer up on the equity game that's being played right now by equity partners and roll ups.
Interesting.
Headhunter called me and I went to work for a real estate management company, multifamily. We were third party fee managers. I was CEO of that company. We were in 14 states in the Southeast. We managed about 2,400 employees and had about 2.4 billion in assets. We managed the assets for our clients who owned the real estate, the multifamily
Mm,
properties.
okay.
I was there 2 years, couple partnerships. I'm a serial entrepreneur. And then we moved back to Texas. My wife is a sixth generation Texan. And, all of our family was here. My family's in the Midwest. And we've been here ever since. Right on the other side of that wall are 30 hardworking employees here in North Dallas area doing plumbing and heating residential service. We've been doing this for 25 years now and just having a ball.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so we're gonna have so much to dive into here and so much to cover. When you sold, okay, let's go back to the father-son conversation because I think that that is unique in and of itself. The conversation of like, we know we're not going to work together, but you talked about kind of breaking his heart and everything. Like, what was his aspiration for you?
Well, it was something I already knew. I knew the technical aspect of plumbing,
Hmm.
and I had finished school. My father thought that was a step backwards. He had busted his tail to get 4 kids through college. Now, when I say my dad was a drill sergeant, I hope you understand what that means.
Oh, I'm
Um,
service. Yeah,
there's a
I know exactly
certain
what it means.
level of volume and a certain level of certainty in his voice
Hmm.
that you did not cross. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just that simple. I'll just put it that way.
Yep.
So for me to say this is what I wanted to do and that he was opposed to it was really one of the first gentle ways that I stepped out and started to take my own ground.
Hmm.
Um, it was that he saw it as I've worked my whole life so you could go to college and do something different. Like many, many baby boomers that came from the manufactured age, my son, my daughter is going to do better than me.
Yep.
He saw it as I was going to do the same as him. And,
Oh,
and so, in his wisdom and in his research, I think he probably talked to a couple friends and said, "What's the hardest sales job on the face of the earth?" And he gave it to him, thinking that, that would scare me off. Um, as it turned out, I had something I didn't realize, and I just loved the idea of sales. Now, I want to talk about the New York life. He picked
yeah.
those 3 companies because they had the best sales training of all life insurance companies at that time.
Hmm.
So, the basic fundamentals of an introduction, defining the problem, providing a solution, and helping someone buy. You just learn those structures because every week we were in training.
Yeah.
And, and you learn that hard selling, even though sometimes you have to cold call, hard sales don't work. Okay.
I do not.
People hate to be sold. They
Hmm.
love to buy things. So I learned quickly. I started reading all kinds of books, guys like maybe you've never heard before, like Og Mandino and um,
I read that book just
Dale
recently.
Carnegie and just
Yeah.
over and over and over. Yeah, and so I really believe that especially leaders are readers, and I think salespeople are readers. So
Hmm.
I just loved it, and it was the greatest piece of advice he ever gave me. So I hope I answered your question.
You did for sure. It's such a fascinating thing because like I've talked about this with people, but I've not talked about this on the show. I was in a sales job, but it was a retail sales job, right? Which is different than being in the field or being, in an insurance role or anything else like that. And I would get frustrated, and so I quit sales jobs because I was going to go play poker full time. Right, I was going to roll it up and just go be a professional poker player, something I'd been working on for a while. And I did that for 9 months, and then I just had an awakening that this was not the path that I wanted to go do. And so I'm like, okay, great, I'm gonna go get a job. So I got a job, And then I'm like, well, great. I need to be back in sales because I need the income from sales. Let me go figure this thing out. And so I got 3 interviews, right? The first one was with Northwestern Mutual,
Wow.
right? And it was such an interesting moment because in that interview, I was very keenly aware that I was not ready for that kind of sales role, right? I interviewed in 2 other places. I got offers at all 3 of these, companies, right? And so then I started to kind of like have to sit down and think about it. And I was not ready for the Northwestern Mutual. I would have, combusted into flames, right? Knowing what I know now, because I wasn't super comfortable yet. I wasn't all that driven. I wasn't all that confident. But the minute you said Northwestern Mutual, like that's the thing that comes back because now you see those guys when you're out networking, right? You can't go to a networking group without seeing some sort of financial advisor and everything. And I just, I've never shared that on this show, but I was almost a Northwestern Mutual guy. I ended up in finance differently, right? In more of a retail fashion because that was more aligned with like my kind of like upbringing and I did all the testing and all that stuff. Um, but yeah, Northwestern Mutual, they tried to get me in there, but I was so nervous about the whole thing that I just like I don't think I can do this, which is fascinating because I now run a thing to where I have to go out and sell and be commission only and figure it all out and everything. So, um, how did you pick between New York Life and the others? What was the defining thing, if there was one?
It's a great question. I started to look at all of them, but I was a youth director at the local United Methodist Church where I was going to school. I was just finishing up my last semester.
Mhm.
And there was a gentleman there. His name was Jerry Burns. Jerry was just such a good guy, and everybody knew him. And I knew he worked for New York Life. And I said, Jerry, would you talk to somebody in Little Rock and see if they'd be open to talking to me about maybe joining them? So I never looked at the other 2 companies because this
Whoa.
gentleman named Dick Cobb came to me and I can almost do this. No, Brent, you know what? New York Life's going to look at you and you're going to look at us and we're going to look at a series of green lights, red lights, and yellow lights. And if we're all green, man, we're going to go. If we got yellow, we're going to stop and ask questions. And hey, you know what? If it's red, we're just going to have an upfront conversation and I'm going to help you find where you need to go. He was the salt of the earth. And so, shouldn't you be sold by your sales manager to come and work for him if he's going to teach you sales? He was awesome. He would go on sales calls with me. I learned so much from Dick. I owe him so much.
Wow, very
Yeah.
cool. Skipping around just a little bit, right? I mean, you have such a rich history. So, what I'd like to jump to is you're building this trades business, right? Were people seeking you out to buy it? Were you shopping it around because you were thinking about doing an exit? Like, how did that come up in the first place? Was it you driving it, or was
Yeah.
it just right place, right time?
So, I coach business owners.
Yes. Hmm.
And one of the biggest reasons small businesses fail is they don't have a plan. And I was working for a company to get my licenses in Texas before I started my business. And I was trying to figure out, probably because a straight commission was going, hey, if you don't have any sales, you're dead.
Yeah.
So, how are you going to make that phone ring or how are you going to be sustainable? How are you going to move your business? Well, I ran into this company called American Home Shield. And at the time, they were probably about a $300 million company, I think, something like that. And maybe not that big. Um, I thought, good Lord, if I can win that customer over, I have just solved my problem of sustaining myself until I get enough customers to really have a business. I said, that's like a dream. And so they gave me 500 calls in both trades. The accountant and me did a business plan. And I said, what can I do with that revenue? And I said, you know what? I'm going to go buy an Astro van. I'm going to get it lettered. I went and got a $10,000 line of credit. I went and I started from day one having calls to run, and
Yeah.
that's how I started. I am still a preferred contractor with American Home Shield, and it was the best customer I've ever had because it started my business. Who can say they've kept their business or their customer for over 30 years
That's
from
wild.
day one? And so that's how we got it started. American Home Shield was owned by ServiceMaster. And
Oh.
so the CEO actually that wrote the foreword for my book
Mhm.
was that gentleman who referred me in Service Master, said, "You need to talk to this guy." Um, and there was a joke or 2 about we've got he's a plumber and he's an accountant. Is that what you said? And so, anyway, so that's how it happened. And, I was the 2nd company they bought in that roll-up. And then I went on to help them. We did a half $500 million roll-up of the plumbing and air conditioning business, 99 to 2001.
So I'd like to talk about this for just a second, right? Because when we talked about this on the pre-call, this really kind of like stunned me because I think I think in that situation, it could have been just as easy if you were looking at different data or maybe had a different perspective of not seeing value in that work, right? Because identity of entrepreneurs sometimes gets a little murky and everything. And, I'm not going to go do this work for American Home Shield because that's not my work. It's not my business, right? I'm a big fan of, before you go off and decide what you're going to go try to help some people in a meaningful way, right? And sometimes it's not always beautiful and it doesn't mean you start with like the main business, but, you kind of get your foot in the water. Did you have any of that resistance? Did you have any of that like, "Well, this just feels like work, and I'm not here to work. I'm here to go build a business." Did anything like that show up for you, or was it just pragmatic
Well,
sense?
yeah, I understand your question. At my core, I justify things from a financial side and from the number side. And
Yeah.
then I take the risk and the energy on the entrepreneur side. And so most entrepreneurs, when they look at a goal or a business, they don't see the risk. If they really truly see it, what they see is between them and the goal, it's just a lot of hard work.
Mhm.
So there were a couple of key pieces of information that I had at the time. One was their renewal rate was about 60%. And that told me that um, 4 out of 10 customers that I serve for them, if I do a good job, the next year, they might be my customer, number one.
Mhm.
Number two is you need to know what your overheads are. What is your break even point? Your break even point are your overheads plus the amount of money you need to retire debt or pay yourself.
Mhm.
Basically, as you move on, that's really your cost of goods sold for the work. But that's a variable expense. And I'm going to get way too geeky on the accounting side. But what I'm saying is, I knew that if I ran the calls for American Home Shield, I could sustain myself because the second reason small business owners or entrepreneurs or startup businesses fail is they don't have enough cash to sustain a cycle to where they can gain that ground. So I saw it as a solution to solving 2 problems. And as my business scaled and grew, it became an answer for different types of problems at each stage. And we can talk more about those stages at the end
Mhm.
about how we benefit and how it's still a win-win with a home warranty company because they're less than 20% of our business, but they have a very strategic, very important part. And I'm a part of the Pro Council group that's about 20 contractors that helps them. I'm 61, which means that I'm the oldest home shield contractor alive now, still doing work for them.
Wow.
I don't know if that's something to hang your hat on, but but there's still a strategic reason, and it has changed and evolved over time.
Interesting. It's just so flooring because like I'll talk to people and they'll especially consultants and people who are new, they don't really know their lane yet. I'll see people turn down work because it feels too much like trading time for money, right? And they've got these big, huge aspirations, but they're bleeding because they have bills and overhead and stuff like that. And I just wish more people would look at it from that perspective of like, because sales confidence comes from like going and putting yourself out there, trying to go see what you can do. But if you're running a business, you got to keep the business moving forward in a meaningful way. It might not be at the tier
It
that you want it to
Do you
be.
mind if I make a point real quick?
Please, yeah.
So you hear a lot, and I move owners of businesses who own a job to owning a business and building a legacy.
Mhm,
But I think we talk about owning a job as something that's undesirable. The only thing undesirable about it is how long you stay there, right? Owning a job gives you flexibility, some quality of life, some choices, and the ability to only be limited by yourself. Give me that deal.
Yeah.
I'll own the
100%.
job, right? That's different than you giving me a job.
Mhm.
Okay. We never make that distinction. We talk about that in the context of small business owners. And guess what? For some people, that's where they want to live and that's where they want to be. And if that's truly where they want to be, then enjoy it. That's exactly where my dad was.
Yeah.
Um, there are quite a few that don't want to be there and they feel quite honestly stuck. And
Yeah.
and that's a different problem. I just want to make that point.
No, I love that framing around it, right? Because one of the things that I talk about with people is that if you don't ever get this entrepreneurial venture to the place to where it is a job, a series of buttons you push, things happen on the other end of the machine, you don't ever get to any of the aspirations that you had when you started this thing, right? And so because, I talk with a lot of people who are struggling from focus and they've kind of come to this idea of like, well, I can just be this wild, crazy visionary person. And it's like, eventually this has to become a job. It has to become a series of repeatable events and actions we do, or else we never get out of the chaos, right? Which brings me to kind of my next question for you, right? You said this when we were initially connected, and I've been thinking about it since then. Can you talk a little bit about the messy middle, just in broad terms, and what that means for you and kinda how that shows up in the skilled lane specifically?
Yeah, and so let's just talk about the skilled lane, but this can apply to any business. I think I can make the point of what the messy middle might look like for any business.
Okay,
And
yeah,
so let's talk about how we start out. We start out as solopreneurs, just like I did, a truck and some tools and some knowledge and a lot of attitude and effort and let me tell you what, nobody works harder for you than you. Okay. And
yeah,
so you have all that energy and the customer understands and picks that up. You get this excitement, you're putting some money in the bank, you're seeing a big ticket and you're seeing a small ticket and you go, I want more big tickets, that kind of thing. I can
mhm,
see a future, those types of things. Then you head into what we call the teaming phase. And in the teaming phase, you're acquiring teammates. You may still be in a sales role. I would highly suggest that you don't leave your sales role in that phase. And that's when you start to make a little more money. And in that role, in my lane, people are starting to make a little bit north of maybe 100 grand. Okay. They're six figures and they couldn't imagine that happening. It's really happening and they see it. So they keep growing, right?
mhm.
And And that next step in my lane, it's somewhere between 800,000 to about 1.5 million, which makes up 80% of the contractors in our industry. They're either 1.5 million or below. Let's
Whoa,
talk about and that's typically where the messy middle is. And I like to talk about it as a whirlpool and you're at the top of it, right? You're in it, you know you're in it, and let me tell you what it starts to feel like. You're making less money than you did 2 or 300,000 back, a couple employees fewer. And you're trying to figure out, why am I losing money? I'm doing more revenue. It looks like that. You're hitting a ceiling of complexity. More things are pulling you in all kinds of directions that have nothing to do with taking care of a customer or putting money in the bank.
mhm,
Here's the danger zone is when your mindset is, all I have to do is work a little bit harder and we'll push through this. And this is the time where you have to start looking. And let me talk about Sam for a minute. Okay. And,
sure,
and I, Sam was one of my clients and he was in the messy middle.
mhm,
And we were in one of our hour conversations. And I said, Sam, I said, what do you think the biggest challenge or the biggest problem we have to solve is? And he gave me a lot of answers, and I said, "You're really busy doing a lot of things. Who on your team could take something off of you that you really hate doing?" And if you'll allow me to be a little unprofessional with my language, and you suck at it, okay? And he came back and he said, "Well, I don't like the thought that I suck at anything. I said, I don't either, but I can come up with about five right off the top of my head. We talk about accounting. I don't suck at accounting, but there's a reason I'm not an accountant. I don't enjoy doing that kind of work.
Mhm.
I appreciate the number side of it, but it just it wasn't something I wanted to do. I wanted the education. I didn't want to do it. The next step we took was I said, Sam, you need to start thinking who, not do.
Mm. Yeah.
Okay. Because that's how we're going to push through this because you already know how to do all this stuff, right? Oh, yeah, I'm doing it all. That's why I'm working 80 hours a week. I said, great. Let's get back to 40 and let's find out from these five people, could we get 20% of that off of you? What would that feel like? See, he had to know that there was a possibility that he could change and it didn't look like more work. Our brain is an amazing thing. When we go to sleep at night, we go to work on things we don't even think about.
Mhm.
And our brain will help us work against the things that don't make sense. And so if the only answer is to work harder, but that's going to put my marriage at risk, it's going to put me financially at risk. The brain's going, hey, stop, don't do it. And you can't feel it and you know what's going on. Can I share just one of my phrases that I try to share with my clients? I say, different isn't always better, but better is always different.
Mm. Yeah.
Different isn't always better, but better's not always different. And I say that for two reasons. If somebody's compulsive and just wants to do new things and try new things, that's probably a disaster. Okay.
Mhm.
Because your hit ratio is going to be very, very small. But sometimes we have to realize that I have to do something different and risk that to be better. So then we just talk about trying to get to the next bend of the river. What one thing can we take off that would make and usually we try to find the thing that maybe you're not good at and that you don't appreciate doing and you don't like
Mhm.
doing. And because it not only is it a relief from energy and time, but it's a relief psychologically to say, man, that really feels good to have somebody else do payroll. I have 10 more hours to do something with. I can sell. And that's the next thing. But I think the messy middle in our business, it's 1.5 million or down. Okay. And quite honestly, you want to hear the secret recipe about how to get through the messy middle?
Yeah.
If there's 80% who are doing this and they're 20% doing this, would you guess that these folks are doing something a little differently? Let's
Yeah.
start looking at what they're doing and let's make the first thing that makes the most sense. And if we stayed on the sales side, sales and marketing, they consistently invest 8 to 12% of their revenue in marketing and sales.
Mhm.
And so they invest in technology and streamline, thinking better, faster, cheaper. And now in this world of AI, there's nothing more to help us in speeding things along that have nothing to do with taking care of customers or taking care of team members. So, John, I started to ramble. I'm going to stop here. You go
No,
ahead.
you're good. I love that, right?
Question, please.
So I want to talk about one thing because I was looking through your book, and you have these really great kind of ideas that are boxed in, right? And so two of them, I'm just kind of curious because they're in line with what we're talking about here, right? One of them you put in there is that essentially you can't lead to someplace you haven't been, which I firmly respect, especially in the lane of sales, right? If you if your only answer is more, you're not ready to be a sales leader, you shouldn't even be trying to go do it. Okay. But then you also said something in one of the other chapters that delegation without understanding fails. Okay. So in this lane, how do people ride that line, knowing that you don't have to be great at everything, but also potentially understanding that you don't know enough to lead them, right? How does someone split that hair?
So, just to understand your question, I understand the delegation question, but the other one was I think you boxed a quote. You can't take someone somewhere you've never been before.
Mhm.
In my example of that individual I was coaching, they knew how to do it. Maybe they weren't great at it, but they understood it. Let's take payroll, for instance, or something simple in QuickBooks. Or um, you can't lead and manage somebody where you've never been before. Um, in most technicians' cases, they can't teach somebody a work skill if they've never done it themselves because there's 8 different ways it can fail and don't do it this way, and
Mhm.
that's really my point in making that.
Okay.
You don't have to be the master or the best. In fact, I would argue, let's find the thing that you love to do, that you do better than anybody in the company. Let's hire everybody else to do all the other stuff. I mean,
Okay.
ultimately, that's the goal to owning a business. Because
Agreed.
that what I do when I coach folks, I say, you know, I'm reminded Terry, owned a business in Delaware, and, and I said, "Terry," said, "What do you love to do?" And he said, "Well, I really love talking to customers." And I said, "So you like sales? You like client fulfillment?" He goes, "Yeah." He said, "I could do that all day long." I said, "Are you telling me that if you got up at 8 in the morning and worked all the way till 5 at night, you would be just as energized at the end of the day as you were at the beginning?" "Yeah, yeah, I really would. If I could do that all and everybody take care of everything else." I said, "You just defined your vision for your company,
Mhm.
because wouldn't you love to come to work and do that every day?" And, for me, I enjoy sales, um, but what I really enjoy doing is leading a group of people to a common goal so that they can realize things as a team greater than they could by themselves. And our strategy for that is through a pay for performance model where everybody wins. I've taken a while to kind of structure that out. But pretty much, John, that's what I do. I do that with our team here, and that's what I do when I coach people on how to grow their business. And here's the thing, good coaches get to the point where they're not required, right?
Mhm.
And so that second piece I think about the delegation thing, you
Mhm.
can't just delegate, say, "Hey, here's the job description, go do it."
Yeah.
Okay? They need training. They need managers. Stephen Covey said, "If you have a garden, there's gotta be a gardener. Somebody's gotta pull the weeds." And so, in the manager role, if you delegate something, you have to clearly set expectations. You have to clearly train them, make sure that they know how to do it. And let me give you my fancy recipe for training.
Yeah,
I do
please.
it, you watch. We do it together. You do it, I watch, and then I go away. Okay. So make sure they're trained, expectations train, and then evaluate their performance. And if the number's not where it needs to be and it's realistic, we got to hold them accountable. I mean,
Mhm.
that's that simple. So when I talk about delegation, you can't just, and I've made these mistakes, hundreds of them, saying, "Oh, okay, they know how to be an accountant. They can go do this and that, whatever." I didn't set some expectations. I didn't clearly make sure they understood what they were supposed to do. And then I didn't evaluate them. And I didn't hold them accountable. All I did was look at a big messy problem and say, "Oh, I got the wrong person." No, Rob person is the person leading them.
Yep.
That was the issue. So,
Epic.
hope I
Very
answered your
well said.
question there. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely, I love that. You talked about measuring performance. I love measuring performance. I'm a big fan of anything you are not measuring, you can improve, okay? Are there certain things in the trades lane of business that are very common performance measures, but they're the wrong performance measures?
Ooh, okay. Wasn't ready for that one. Um, yeah, so messy middle.
Mhm,
There's another problem that usually is happening in the messy middle is you have a large portion of non-billable time, meaning if I have a technician working 8 hours a day, they may only be actually collecting money for their time 50% of the time.
mhm,
And I ran into this thing called Parkinson's law. And so let me see if I can easily sum it up. There's much more to it. But John, you're a technician and you have 8 hours to work today. I guarantee you 40 hours, and we love having you on the team. I have two jobs for you today. Now, John, how long do you think it's going to take you to do those two jobs?
oh, okay, this is fascinating because 'cause I'm fascinated by how bad we are at estimating time, right, around work and everything, right? So, I'm gonna say 2 jobs, 3 hours.
Okay. Now let me say it to you a different way, John.
Mhm.
John, after these 2 jobs are done, I'm gonna send you home. Does that mean you're only gonna get 6 hours for the day? Now now how
Then
long
it's
are they
7
gonna take,
hours.
John?
Now it's 7 hours to do these 2 jobs.
But probably 9 hours, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, one of the things I learned in my training with the team is said, "Look, on the average, we need 4 to 5 completed calls a day." And I'm gonna go to training here real quick, but, um, so, let me answer your question real quick. Measuring how much work that's being done versus work that is valuable, or the
Mhm.
KPI that says how many completed calls do we have per day versus now let me ask you another question, John, if you'll play my role play as a
Sure,
technician.
yeah.
You have 2 kids, 2 lovely kids, very loving wife. You've been married for 8 years, and your 6-year-old is in the recital at 6 o'clock tonight, and you have 5 calls to do today. How long do you think it'll take to get those 5 calls done?
As short as possible so I can hit that recital.
Exactly, right? So
Mhm.
Parkinson's law says work gets done in the time allotted, right? Well, the other part of this ceiling of complexity in the messy middle is you've got more people than you can keep up with or keep an eye on, and you're so busy doing that you aren't whoing, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And you aren't training, and you aren't evaluating, and you aren't holding accountable. So in one of my trainings, I realized, hey, I haven't trained these guys up. Now you're a customer, and I come to you, and you know you have a problem needs to get taken care of, and we're first call of the day, and you wanna talk to me about all kinds of things. I say, John, I can appreciate that. I see on the work order that we've got a toilet problem and also a problem under the faucet. I want to visit with you about that, but can I go evaluate that? Because I have 5 calls to run today. I have 2 hours to do this. And I know you have a busy day, and I don't want you to have to pay more for what I'm doing. And I don't want you to have to miss things. Can I go look at those right now? Now,
Absolutely.
John, what do you know about my day? I am committed to your success. I have a schedule to keep. I'm gonna get it done quicker so you can go have lunch with your friends.
Mhm.
Now you and I are working together to a common goal, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I didn't teach my technicians how to handle that conversation so that the customer wouldn't feel like they're getting passed over. We're gonna get to
Mhm.
talk about that. Let me go diagnose this first, then let's come back and talk about what you have. If it takes too long, we can put more on the schedule at your convenience or something like that, right?
Mhm.
So it's not always that the individual the Parkinson's law says that individual's making that decision. Sometimes they just haven't been trained or they don't know how to handle the situation. So to
Oh,
your
yeah.
point, what is a KPI or something that doesn't make sense to follow? Things that don't line up with client satisfaction or growing profitably. There's the
Okay.
answer.
I love that. I'd like to talk a little bit about the business itself, right? In the first version of it, because you sold the business, right? And I'd like to kind of zero in like just before that. How are you feeling before that? Were you feeling like, hey, I'm a titan of industry? Like, of course you want to buy this thing? Were you feeling kind of burnt out? Was it I've done this thing, I wanna go find what the next season how were you did you feel stuck at all? Is that what made, like, exiting and selling seem like the right thing to do?
I knew that the business was starting to speak to me about the things that I felt like I needed to go learn that I wasn't going to learn in the business. And I felt like, I think if you looked in the book, you might have seen it or not, but I realized that you have to grow at a rate faster than your company or,
That's actually
or it'll,
one of the
it'll
notes
stall
I
out.
have. You cut me off because I was gonna ask you about that in a little bit
I'm
because
so
I
sorry. Okay.
No, it's a great
So, but,
line, right?
but it's true. Okay.
Yeah.
And I believe leaders are readers. And I read back then, I was reading Michael Gerber, E Myth,
Mhm.
Stephen Covey,
Oh, yeah.
um, Deming, MBO. some Peter Drucker stuff, and I was reading a lot. I really believe that you'll be changed every 5 years by the books you read and the people you meet. I just really believe that. And so if your listeners out there, hey, just find something you like and read it, okay? But what as I started to read, I also went to a coach called Dan Sullivan. He's the strategic coach
I
up
know who
in
Dan Sullivan
Toronto.
is.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
and it just fascinating guy,
Yeah.
um, and learned so much. But what what I started to realize was I didn't sell my company. I didn't turn the money down. I enjoyed that. That was great. But I sold it for what I needed to go learn, and I knew I couldn't get it in my own company. I started to realize I need some polish.
Interesting.
I need some HR experience. I need to be a better communicator. I need to learn more about management. How do I scale and grow my business? Those types of things. And man, at the right time, our industry was rolling up, um, plumbing and air conditioning businesses, and I said, "I'm in." But I didn't sell it really for, the reason of cashing out.
Hmm.
It was really that I felt like I was a little stagnant in my development. Um, yeah,
Interesting.
and so, um, funny enough, I became at the executive level, one of the things I missed or missed out on was that training of middle management. And so I had to really
Mm.
try to learn other things. So
Were you so a little bit more on that if I could. Were you holding it like mentally? It's like I think that's a beautiful perspective to have of like I get this opportunity to go learn these things that I don't think I'm at the level at. Were you holding it as like, okay, great, I'm gonna go do this foray and then I'm coming back out here with this stuff? Or was it just like I don't think I'm at the level I need to be. Let's go see.
yeah,
How defined was the plan?
can for your listeners, it has not been all cherry and ice cream for me. I've been inches from bankruptcy and I've had commas and one's better than the other, but I learned a lot more when I was inches from bankruptcy, and I've learned a lot more from my mistakes.
Yeah.
The way I learn, and I think there are a lot of entrepreneurs out there like this, we are not afraid to fail. We are not afraid to make mistakes, and then we get real comfortable with what now?
Hmm.
And so I want to be real clear with you. I didn't plan out this life and this strategy at each point and it played out.
Sure.
It was more of a weighing of time, it was very fluid about opportunities, weighing opportunities and whether I say yes or no to the opportunity. And,
Interesting.
um, and so, um, and some of it was kinda like Forrest Gump. I mean, I just kinda stumbled into it, um, but I do believe this, I think I'll give credit to Jimmy Johnson. He was a past Dallas Cowboys football player
Yeah.
or a
Hmm.
football coach,
Hmm.
and, he said, "Success is when preparation meets opportunity." And I think as long as you are engaged in learning and working on yourself harder than you are your job, you're preparing yourself for something better in the future. You know, the better question is, what is it I'm working on today to get better so that I'm ready tomorrow for a new challenge? And
Yeah.
so, no, I didn't strategically think the way my life's planned out. I will say this, there was a point in my life when I made some real life choices where I said no to progress in my career for the benefits of my family. And that's a
Oh,
different kind of decision. It's not a business
100%.
decision. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, I appreciate that w deeper look into the rearview mirror of it. How are you feeling exiting corporate? Like, was it was it a series of events? Was it just one thing? Did you just, like, feel called? Like, what was it like?
Yeah, I doubled the size of that not quite doubled, about 40% of that multifamily company, and my ego really took a shot because I got walked out of the building, um, after 2 years, and,
Whoa.
yeah, it was and some of it was some of my hubris and pride. My product was good, but my heart wasn't good. I wasn't I wasn't what I would call a servant leader at that time.
Mm,
I got really turned on to the X's and O's, the P&L, and I got a little full of myself. And I can say that at 61. I sure couldn't say it at the moment. And I had some really good mentors that were around the board table that exit interviewed me. Um, I'm proud of my body of work. I'm not proud of how it ended.
mhm,
And maybe that's a way to tell your listeners, guys, I've had ups and downs. Um, but I will tell you, I was done with corporate in my life. I had played at a level where I was responsible to a board.
mhm,
I'll just leave it at this. Part of my being walked out was right around the Enron days, and
mm,
I had to disclose something that it was either the beginning of a new beginning for the company and me, or was the beginning of the end for me. And I knew,
mm,
and I made a choice to do that. Um, but there were other things. I could have handled it differently. But
mhm,
but the bottom line was I really am made for owning my own P&L, starting my own business. Home was calling me back to Texas and our kids were at the age. And it was one of those kind of things. Here's how I sum up my corporate life
please.
versus small business. In corporate, it's like being at the zoo. You you get washed 2 or 3 times a week. You get fed 3 times a day. It's a really cool place to be. You get great care. You got great benefits. You're in a pretty safe environment, but you're in a cage. Small business is like being on the open range in Africa. Here was young Brent's mistake. I thought I was the lion on the range. In small business at 61, I am the rabbit in the fence row, just
Oh,
trying
interesting.
just trying to protect what I have. That's the way I look at it, and it's probably somewhere in between,
Mhm,
uh, but that's my view of it. You're not limited, you're wide open, you're not restrained, but it's pretty scary on the range, especially
mm,
if you're a rabbit.
yeah. So, okay, next question. Getting back and getting to come and do it again, right? Launching the business again, deciding this is your lane, deciding you're not corporate, taking that detour and learning all that stuff about how to coach the coaches, the middle managers, and all that stuff. What did you do differently in the very early days of version 2 that you didn't know to do or you couldn't do in version 1? How does it rolled out differently?
Here's the benefit of corporate experience. I got exactly what I went for. Um, Toward the end of my first business, when right before I sold it, things were moving around pretty fast. Okay.
Mhm,
It was just, there's a lot coming. We were growing fast. And quite honestly, I was 29, 30, um, still an adult, responsible for my actions. But the weight of being responsible for families of people who were twice my age or nearly twice my age, um, I started to realize I might need to get a little more experience of what I'm doing. I mean, it was really a safety net for me.
hmm,
You fast forward, you do mergers and acquisitions, you work for a Fortune 300 company, you're in a CEO position, you have 2,400 employees. You go home every once going, wait a minute, I thought you did this to get out of feeling like this.
mm,
Learning at that level, when I went back into small business, I talked about how things started moving like this because I had seen it before.
mm,
And I had seen different, and the difference in small business, or at least in my business, was I got a chance to grow, but head off all the corporate BS.
yeah,
And I'll tell you one hard and fast rule is I have an open door policy. You can come and talk to me about anything. Okay. And there's only one rule. You have to bring your direct report with you. We're never going to have a triangulated conversation. You're not going to tell him, and he's not going to run to me. And then I'm going to go to you and find out. We're all going to get in the room. And it happens every year. Somebody walks in my office and say, "Hey, Bill, how you doing?" And I'm doing great. And how are the kids? And yeah, hey, you got a minute? Sure. I want to talk to you about Sam. Oh, stop right there. Sam's your direct report, right? Have you talked to Sam about this? Nope. Why not? Go talk to him about it. If you guys can't work it out, bring them both. Both of you guys come back in. You know that's the rule. Don't ever do that again.
Hmm,
That probably heads off more corporate crap than I've ever experienced at those different levels. It's
what
a
a
game.
nugget.
In corporate, the game is the game of your work, your technical job, what you have to do, you have to perform, and then there's the game of managing your career. It's just we're going down or I hope we haven't lost every corporate mind out there, but I mean, those it's my own unvarnished thoughts and opinions because
No,
I've swam in both streams.
and a big part of this show and the goal and intention of it is there are other people that are getting their glass tapped right now, right? There's a lot of layoffs, there's a lot of change. AI is recalibrating how business is done. And so, you know, what I try to do is try to make sure that if people I think everyone should go try if they have any interest in trying. I'm not the person who thinks that every person should run their own business. But if you want to go try, please go try, right? Don't be too scared of the failure. Set some safeguards and some boundaries and just go off and try. But if you're not fulfilled in your work, it's worth looking at and trying and stuff like this, but
Yeah,
don't overshoot the mark. Don't think it's going to be easy because it's not going to be easy. At least that's been my experience with it. This has been such a cool conversation, sir. And I think that last little nugget just right there, bring everybody in. Let's head off the bad game of telephone. It's such a meaningful, helpful thing, especially for younger people that are building teams and everything.
yeah.
I want to be super respectful of your time though. So we're going to move into the second part of the show. Same three questions that I ask everybody. Okay. So the first one is, if I'm going out to start a trade business, what do I need to know before I start?
Well, I think I would start by saying, understand that you're entering into something that in the first year, 20% of the businesses that start this year are out of business. After 5 years, more than 50% of that group is out of business. So it's really important to understand, why do businesses fail? And and this is easily found on Gemini or ChatGPT, or you can Google it, whatever. You can find these things.
Hmm.
Some they just fail to plan. Number one, they don't have a plan. How am I gonna? Where's my first customer gonna come from? What is my product? What's my brand? I am a big fan of a one-page business plan. I teach it in my 3-day retreat. You you have to plan. Okay. Second thing is, do I have enough cash to sustain that plan? The third thing is, what is my client experience? What is it that's going to make me different than others?
Mm,
When I talk to people when they start a business, they're usually good technicians. They've been recognized that they're good at something. And others have said, "You know what? John, you ought to start another business."
mhm.
Right? You're really good at that. I bet people would buy that. That's great. It's flattering. Make sure you understand what you're running from and what you're running to. Go interview a couple of people who own a business in what you're considering.
Yeah.
Make sure that that's what you signed up for. And then the fourth thing is really, what's your marketing plan? Because if you can't attract customers, if you can't sustain client interest in what you have to offer, you can learn how to convert that client if you can create enough interest. And so I would start from that, look at that, and Gerber is the one who said this and coined this phrase. Be careful from having an entrepreneurial seizure. If you thought about it today and are starting it tomorrow, that would be the biggest thing I would say. Please, no, don't do that. You answer some of those questions, you do those things, you go do the research, and then if you still are energized, here's where you'll know. The only thing that looks like between you and your goal is a lot of hard work. Then you'll know. If you're truly an entrepreneur, Dan Sullivan says this, it's a life sentence. If it's in you and who you are, you'll never be okay doing anything else. That's what selling life insurance did for me. I could never imagine working for anybody for a set amount. I would feel so limited. This is
Yeah.
this is America, for goodness sakes, okay? You know, we 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 all can have a chance or an opportunity to do this. It's not a level playing field, I'll tell you that. But
Hmm.
that chance and that opportunity is there. Some harder for others than others, right? Some people are blessed with other assets and those types of things, but it is there for you.
Hmm.
Isn't it interesting the people that do the best, that make the most, even the ones that we see today, they didn't come from much. A lot of them didn't come from much.
Hmm.
True entrepreneurs.
Epic. Great answer.
Yeah.
Next question. Right. With social media, everyone's a thought leader and everyone is making posts that are supposed to be helpful of business owners. And that means there's a lot of business takes and ideas that are overboiled down to just like one line tweets. I'm curious, what is the business lesson that you can see now in the form of a tweet or a social media post? And you can say, yeah, but you really had to go through it the hard way.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm not trying to plug my book, but at the beginning of my book, I talk about when I was inches from bankruptcy. And this happened after I had already sold the business. I already had a successful one. It wasn't because I didn't know, it was because of pride. The
Mhm,
internet's not gonna tell me what to do with my pride, okay? And it was out of that failure that I got 2 lessons that I've never abandoned ever since. And when I talk about almost bankrupt, I was $1,000,000 in debt, and it was all my fault. It was because I took my eye off what I knew. And so here are the 2 things I would share. I walked away from that saying, and I call them commandments, the 2 business commandments I never, ever let go. You can never delegate the culture of your company. If you do, somebody else owns your value system, and that business isn't yours, it's theirs.
mm,
You set
well
the
said.
rules. If you don't set the rules, you're giving anybody the chance to declare whatever the rules they want to be. The second one is you can have somebody do your financials, but you can never delegate the ownership of your numbers and your financial responsibility. And I don't know that you can get that in a sound bite on the internet.
Yeah,
You might get it on a YouTube, the right kind of YouTube, but
maybe. Epic,
yeah.
but great answer, right? Like, I mean, we're not really here for sound bites, we're here for the depth, so I appreciate that. Last question, Brendan, then I can let you go. For someone not limited to the trades, because one of the things we didn't really get to spend a whole lot of time talking about in this current version of you is you have the trades business, but then you also have this other coaching and consulting business, right? So independent, whether it's trades, coaching, consulting, something else like this, and you might have already laid out this answer, and it's okay if you did. For an entrepreneur tomorrow who's going to go off, what's your advice to them if it's any different than the trades specific advice you gave?
Um, they're parallel to those about planning and doing the research. The one thing I would say is it what do they have similar or what do they have different?
Well, I'm curious, right? Because, like, the first question is about, okay, if you're going to go off in the trades, what do you need to know to start?
Right.
Okay.
Sure.
From a more generic, just entrepreneurial, you just start thinking about entrepreneurial stuff, right? You want to go dip your foot in the water and you don't know what you want to be when you grow up, right? What's your advice to
Got it.
that person?
Got it. Yeah. I'm a big fan of personality profiles.
Same.
Yeah,
Mm,
and so, know what your est is. What are you best at? What are you fastest at? What are you and try to get in touch, and we talked about it, I think. Everybody's got their own something that they really enjoy doing from 8 to 5, and they're just as energized at the end of the day. No matter whether it's skilled trades, and I work with all kinds of different small business owners. It's just that my lane in skilled trades is so big. I mean,
sure.
there are like 140,000 small businesses just in residential service for plumbing and air conditioning. It's a $120 billion space. I work with roofers. I work with one person had a closet organizing business.
Mm,
So what I would do, something's going to pop up. you might be a finance, right brain, left brain. Myers-Briggs always great. There's some personality profiles out there that are really, really good. There's a wealth builder
Hmm.
analysis about entrepreneurs and people who are in that lane. I would
100%.
really, really suggest that you get in that. But all of it's trying to determine what it is you have a passion for, because that's what's going to fuel you. And I think even before you do the business plans and the do you have the cash, make sure you're doing something you love, or might as well keep doing what you're doing until you find it.
Oh, Brent, I love that. Because honestly, personality awareness is the thing that showed me that that there was a different way to do it. Right. I got to do disc with a sales coach, and I came back as a C. And so that was the beginning of me really waking up and just realizing it's not that I can't sell, it's that I need to learn how to do it differently because my personality is not really built for sales, right? Doesn't mean I can't do it, just have to figure it out. But it all started with that awareness, right? And it was this very interesting situation because I didn't really think of myself as like super egoic, but I had this moment of like, I can't be the only person. I can't be the only person that's had these struggles and has this personality and has found their way through it. So let me go try to like figure that out. And complete game changer, right? As far as I now get to do these things because I'm very aware of who I am and what I'm good at and what I struggle with, and so I think it's super important for anyone who's going to go into like a high performance role to really understand themselves, right? So I love that you said that. Brent, thank you so much for coming on here, man. The nuggets here are many, right? And I really hope that people can slow down and really spend some time to kind of marinate on these ideas that we're talking about. If people want to come learn more about you, what you're working on, where's the best place for them to come keep up to date with you?
Yeah, I make it real easy for 'em. If they've heard me on your podcast or in other areas, they can go to theskilledtradescoach.com, and there you're not gonna get sold. There's a button on there, connect with Brent. I need to capture a couple things, your name. You're not giving me anything special or but in the sense of proprietary, but name and email and contact, and book a conversation with me. You can have a free 30, 40-minute conversation with me just like this, and you'll walk away without having to pay a dime, a couple of ideas of where to go ahead in your business. Um, After that, we'll send you a free ebook of my book, 30 Days to a Better Business. I'll tell you the different ways that I work and I help and coach. But really, my focus now for the next 20 years is to help as many business owners as I can. So that's the first step, and that's the way to find me. And man, it's been a blast. This hour's gone by like a second. And John, it's tribute to you because you run a great podcast and it's been a blast. I do want to say, I can't believe I didn't mention DISC. We do it on every team member in the company. As a guest for you, the host, I can get a lot better. I won't forget DISC next time if I get that question.
No, honestly, I think it's limiting to be like, okay, well, my assessment is great versus the other ones are bad because at this stage, like I've worked with people that are really big into like personality index, and you just gotta pick one, go super deep with it, figure out where the constraints are, where the fringes of it are. But I think most of them have value at this stage, so it's not just about like disc is better. It's just like go find the one that works for you and your team that you can really own and use in a
Yeah.
productive way.
I know
So
we're wrapping up, but I was going to say,
sure.
don't overlook picking 5 or 6 different people that you know very well in different areas in your life. Maybe somebody you know at church and at your hobby and a family member you trust and
Mhm.
say, "Hey, what are the things that just to you look like the things that I'm above average at or I'm good at, or what do you think I do well?" Right?
Yeah.
And what do you think I don't do so well if you can be so bold? And they may have more if it's a mother, they may have more for you, a longer list, but,
Mhm.
it's a great exercise. You don't have to go do a profile. People will tell you, and they will see things that you don't see, and what'll happen is you'll start seeing out of all those people, certain things will start to line up. They'll all see certain things.
Absolutely. The main through thing here that I just really hope everybody appreciates, go spend time and do the research. Go figure out that work that you love to do, right? Don't think that it's gonna be worth it because I've met people who were absolutely miserable sitting on top of $1 million businesses, right? It's super easy to get burnt out. And then, I love that thing of don't delegate your culture, right? Like, know your lane, but also just know that these culture is values, right? Ultimately is what it comes down to. So man, thank you so much, Brent. This is going to be such a cool episode. I think it's going to help a lot of people. And I just really appreciate the time, and I hope you have a great weekend. Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
John. Have a great day.